All right, let me ask you something that still makes my chest tighten a little. What would you do if three 6-year-old boys stared you down like you were the enemy before you even said your name? Here's another one. How many nannies does it take for a billionaire to learn that love isn't something you can outsource? And the last one, the one that flipped my life upside down. What if the monster in the house wasn't a child at all, but grief wearing their faces like a mask? My name is Belinda Johnson. I walked into the Whitaker mansion on a wet Tuesday at 7 a.m. Rain on my back, a thermos of coffee in my hand, because I had a feeling the father hadn't tasted a hot cup in months. 17 nannies had already quit. Not gossip, fact. The agency called the boys a challenge. The internet called them demon kids. I took one look and saw what they really were. 3 small hearts in a hurricane trying to look dangerous, so nobody could tell they were drowning. The house looked like a staged photo someone had shaken hard. Feathers everywhere, slick paint streaks across white walls, a toy truck lodged in a shattered lamp. Tommy stood front and center like a tiny commander, arms crossed, chin-up eyes daring me to flinch. Danny hovered close, shoulders high, scanning for impact. Bobby, still baby-soft around the cheeks, tried to copy his brothers, but his hands trembled just enough to give him away. Barefoot, ready for war. "You can't make us like you," Tommy said, muscles tight around the words. "We don't want another nanny. We want our mama." I set the coffee on the entry table, stepped through a minefield of Legos and sat on the floor, ruined stockings and all. Pattern interrupt. "Good," I said, calm as a pond. "Because I'm not here to replace your mama. I'm here to stand with you while you miss her." Silence. Feathers still drifting in the air like slow snow. Somewhere a bottle rolled in a lazy circle on the tile. You ever watch a child's fight drain out of his shoulders 1 inch at a time? It isn't dramatic. It's tiny. It's brave. Tommy didn't smile, but his grip eased on the truck. Danny's hands lowered from his ears. Bobby took a half step toward me, then pretended he needed to tie a shoe with no laces. I told them my name. I told them I had cookies in my bag. Chocolate chip. "You don't have to eat them if you don't want to, and you don't have to like me if you don't want to," I said, voice steady. "But I'm not leaving today, not if you cry, not if you yell, not if you throw things. You know why." They looked at me like maybe I held a key nobody else had found. "Because I know what it is to be so sad you try to break everything before it breaks you." Yeah, that happened. Foster care doesn't teach you much about marble floors or how to hold a silver tray without rattling it, but it teaches you how to read the weather in a kid's eyes. If you've been there, you know. You know what I mean? John Whitaker, their father, hovered in the hall trying to be invisible. Parents do that sometimes. They stop breathing in the same room as their kids, like oxygen is too expensive, and they might waste it. He had that look. 35, rich enough to buy air rights edges pulled thin by sleepless nights. When he finally introduced himself, it sounded like an apology. "Mr. Whitaker," I said, handing him the thermos drink that before it gets cold. "Then we're going to the kitchen." The kitchen was a battlefield syrup, turning the floor into a skating rink. "Food fight," Bobby yelled for form, and I laughed. Not a mean laugh, a real one. "You're excellent at this," I said, stepping through the sticky mess like it was normal life. "But I have a rule. If you make a mess this good, you have to teach me because I want to be excellent at it too." Another pattern interrupt. Their faces did that little flicker kids do when the script flips. We wiped counters slowly. We ate cookies. We said their mama's name, Sarah, out loud, and we didn't look away. That was our first win. Tiny, but real. Grief is long. The first step is letting your mouth remember what your heart already knows. Then the tunnel moved. John's phone rang as Bobby tried to tell me a joke he could barely finish without falling into giggles, and I watched the color drain from John's face. Lawyer. News segment. Leaked interviews with former nannies calling the boys dangerous. The headline was cheap and cruel. The B-roll worse. Billionaire's demon children drive away 17 nannies. If it were you, what would you have done? Smash the remote and pretend it didn't exist, or tell your kids the ugly truth is coming and sit with them through it? I gave John a condition, and I made it sound like a choice. We watch it together, I said. All of us. And we talk after. No hiding, no pretending. If you want me here, that's the price. He blinked. Men who run empires aren't used to terms they didn't write, but he nodded. Before we get there, let me tell you why I stayed. People always ask. I've worked houses where kids set curtains on fire just to see adults run. I've sat on kitchen floors with boys who kicked until their legs went numb because nobody taught them where to put their fear. I've been the first person to tell a girl she isn't her mother's worst decision. Do I have certifications? I have years. I have scars. I have a way of staying very still when a child is loud and leaning in when a child goes quiet. That's my paper. 8 o'clock. Living room. The TV flickered and there were their faces, their school photos, their names marching across the bottom like a crime crawl, words like problem and behavioral popping in a harsh font. Tommy's jaw locked. Danny's hands crept to his ears. Bobby climbed into my lap without asking, like he'd been doing it forever. Are we broken? Tommy asked, and something in my chest cracked like a plate in a sink. Is that what we are, Belinda? No, I said, and I looked past the camera like the anchor could hear me anyway. You're not broken. You're hurting. There's a difference. Broken means something doesn't work. Hurting means something worked so well that losing it felt like lightning. I explained grief in small words. The body remembers. The way Mama laughed, the way she stirred pancake batter, the way her perfume clung to sweaters even after the wash, and how that turns into thunder in your chest when you think it might disappear. I told them anger is sometimes the only umbrella a kid has when the rain won't stop. That doesn't make the kid a storm, it makes the kid smart. They listened. John listened. The TV kept talking, but the room got quieter. Then came the twist. The one that flipped the whole tenor of the fight. The third former nanny appeared, and I recognized her. Not from our house. From long ago in a waiting room on a bad day, when I was shepherding another child through a meltdown, and she whispered to a nurse that a black nanny would never keep a job with a rich family because those people don't last. I remembered her earrings. I remembered her voice. And there she was, rehearsed, edited, ready to cut, saying the Whitaker boys were damaged beyond repair, saying no amount of love would fix what was wrong. I felt heat rise up my neck so fast I could taste metal. Not because she aimed at me, because I knew who she wanted to hurt. Those 3 boys had just found a sliver of safety, and she swung a hammer. She's wrong, I said, ice calm for them, not her. She's wrong about people like you, and she's wrong about people like me. People like you, Bobby whispered. People judged at the door, I said, steady. People who have to prove we're soft before anyone believes we're strong. Stick around because what happened next will blow your mind. The morning after the broadcast, John's phone lit up like a switchboard. Board members worried about optics. A school counselor asking for an urgent meeting. Then Child Protective Services. A home visit prompted by anonymous complaints that appeared exactly 8 minutes after the segment ended. Do you think that's fair? For a TV station to turn grief into a ratings bump and hand strangers a number to dial like a weapon? John told the boys nobody was taking them away, and he meant it. But his hands shook when he hung up. Fear finds adults just as easily as kids, it just wears a nicer coat. I asked him for one more leap of trust. Invite the social worker for a full day, I said. Not a quick walkthrough, a day, breakfast to bedtime. Let her see who your sons are when nobody's filming. He hesitated, then said yes. Mrs. Rodriguez arrived with a clipboard and a face that gave nothing away. She braced for chaos. She found flour. The boys were making cookies for John's office, not because it's cute, because gratitude is a muscle, and we were learning to use it. Tommy measured flour like a scientist's tongue caught in the corner of his mouth. Danny stirred slowly. Slow is hard for him, but slow is safe. Bobby, with enormous seriousness, tasted a chip for quality control, then handed one to Mrs. Rodriguez like he was issuing credentials. Why the cookies? She asked, pen hovering. Because Daddy's people helped him when Mommy died, Bobby said, solemn. And Belinda says when people help, they should get something sweet. Danny added, we want to go say thank you ourselves. We showed her our real life. Not chore charts nobody reads, but tiny rituals that stitch a day together. Pouring their own milk-setting napkins, choosing a story. We named feelings without making a scene. When Danny lost his favorite truck and panic rose fast and hot, I sat on the floor and breathed slow until he matched me. You're mad, I said. You're scared it's gone forever. You're allowed to be mad. You're allowed to be scared. He didn't stop crying on cue. That isn't healing. He stopped feeling alone in it. That is. At lunch, Mrs. Rodriguez asked John where he'd been the night of the broadcast. Home, he said, and it landed like a small miracle. He used to stay at the office because deals were easier than silence. Now he kept his phone face down. He ate what they ate. He looked at their faces while they talked. It was nothing. It was everything. Then came the second twist, the one I didn't see coming. Rebecca, John's assistant, stopped by with contracts and that tight look people wear when they've been carrying a secret too long. She asked to talk on the back steps. She told me the leak that kicked everything off didn't come from a stranger. It came from inside the hiring pipeline. The agency wanted a premium retainer to keep sending candidates, and they were running out of candidates, so they struck a quiet deal with a producer. Hype the difficulty, make it a spectacle, turn the Whitakers into a season's worth of clicks. The former nanny with the earrings, she was on the agency's payroll as a consultant. As long as the story stayed ugly, the money stayed good. I sat down like the bench had pulled out from under me. I expected bias. I expected exploitation from somewhere. I didn't expect a business model built on 3 little boys' pain. Why tell me? I asked. Rebecca stared at the azaleas. Because I thought I was protecting John from a PR disaster, she said. I was protecting a business. I forgot there were children inside the headline. I told her to tell Mrs. Rodriguez. I told her to tell John. She did. She cried. She apologized to the boys, and they accepted without understanding the price of that word in adult rooms. Children shouldn't need to understand the economy of shame. CPS closed the visit with a sentence I've only heard twice in my career. I won't make recommendations based on anonymous calls triggered by a news segment. Mrs. Rodriguez said, voice steady. I'll make them based on what I saw. And what I saw is a father learning how to stay and 3 children learning how to trust. If it were you, would that sentence be enough to calm your heart? Or would you still sleep with one ear open? That sounds like an ending. It wasn't. Grief isn't a movie with closing credits. It's a season that visits and revisits, and even when summer comes back, you still feel winter in your bones sometimes. We worked. Not in a montage in mornings and car rides and the minutes after nightmares when small feet pad down the hall and whisper, "Can I sleep by you?" And you make space without asking why. We ate pancakes without crying on some days. We cried without hating ourselves on others. John learned to keep the laptop closed until after bedtime, then learned to leave it at the office. He started taking the boys to school instead of only picking them up. He learned to say no to meetings that could have been emails and yes to soccer scrimmages where nobody kept score, and Bobby waved from the field every 30 seconds like he'd been gone a year. 6 months later, nobody called them demon kids anymore. They were just kids, not perfect, not fixed. Kids. Tommy apologized to a teacher without prompting. Danny made a slow friend who liked slow games. Bobby decided he wanted to be a chef and practiced by making toast with a surgeon's focus. John stopped moving like a man wearing armor to bed. His smile reached his eyes. One night in the garden, summer air soft as a blanket, and the kind of quiet a house only earns after a long struggle. John sat beside me on a bench where his wife used to watch the boys blow bubbles. "I need to tell you something," he said. Voice not confident, exactly, but true. When Sarah died, I thought I would never be able to hold anything fragile again. I thought I would break it. You taught me how to hold things without squeezing, how to let them rest in my hands. He went down on one knee. The ring box appeared like it had been waiting in his pocket for a braver man. "If you think I didn't cry, you don't know me." He didn't ask me to marry a billionaire. He asked me to marry a family. The Triplets were our ring bearers and took the job more seriously than any board meeting John ever chaired. At the reception, they stood on chairs and promised to help me remind Daddy to eat lunch because sometimes he forgets. The whole garden laughed the way people laugh when they've been quiet too long. Time moved the way time does, slow in the moment, fast when you glance back. Lily arrived tiny and fierce, and the boys formed a security detail around her like she was a crown jewel. They walked one step ahead with small chests puffed, daring anyone to be unkind. John started a foundation, the first big check he ever wrote, that wasn't about growth. Grief counselors in schools, therapy for families when insurance says no books about loss in libraries where kids can find them without asking. I wrote too, not because I thought I had answers, but because I thought telling the truth might be a map for someone else's dark. The TV station asked for a follow-up when the first story stopped getting clicks. We said yes, our terms. No dramatic music, no shots of crying kids without consent. They interviewed us in the kitchen because that's where life really happens. Flour on the counter, uneven fruit toast, slightly burnt. Tommy said, "We weren't monsters. We were sad." Danny said, "Belinda says feelings are like weather. They change." Bobby said, "We give people cookies when they are kind," and handed a cameraman one because he'd held the boom mic so long his shoulders hurt, and because real stories don't end in pure comfort. Here's the last ripple, the part that still sparks debate in my own heart. The former nanny with the earrings lost her consulting gig when the agency realized the wind had shifted. She showed up at one of our foundation events. Face softer, voice slower, as if she'd practiced the word sorry in the mirror. She asked to speak to me. She wanted help finding families who could use her experience, said she'd learned, said she wanted to make amends. I looked across the lawn at the boys playing tag. Lily asleep on John's chest, donors laughing too big for cameras, and I felt that old heat rise again. Not rage, not anymore. Something closer to responsibility. What do we owe people who tried to profit from a child's pain when they decide they want to do better? If it were you, what would you have done? Forgive and on board, or protect and refuse? Do we believe in redemption when the harm was televised? Or do we protect children first, always, even if it means closing a door someone now wants to open? I told her I would think about it. That's the truth. I told her starting over isn't the same as starting fresh, and that some bridges can hold people again, but not trucks. She nodded. I don't know if she understood. I don't know if I do either all the way. Here's what I know. 3 boys taught me that impossible is just a word tired adults use when they run out of patience. A father taught me that money can't fix grief, but presence can soften it. A baby sister taught 3 big brothers how to be gentle without losing their fire. And I learned again and again that a heart isn't a pie you slice thinner as you add people. It's a muscle you work until it grows. So tell me, was the media just doing a job? Or did they cross a line? No headline should cross. Should CPS be able to show up on a wave of anonymous calls after a TV segment? Or should there be a higher bar when children's futures hang in the balance? And the hardest one, do race and class still decide who gets believed first in rooms with white walls and expensive art when a black woman says, "They're not broken, they're hurting"? Do you think that's fair? If this story hit a nerve, tell me where. If you disagree, tell me why. Drop your thoughts, your own stories, your anger, your hope, all of it in the comments. Like and subscribe if you want more true-hearted stories, told plain. No sugarcoating, just a voice, a room, and the truth as we lived it. Share this with someone who thinks acting out means being bad. Maybe they'll see what I saw that Tuesday morning. 3 small hearts in a hurricane waiting for someone who wouldn't leave. And if it were you, would you stay?